How to reinstall GRUB2 EFI. After successfully updating my BIOS, something went wrong and I ended up with a blinking cursor on the top left corner of a black screen. No errors, no nothing. The BIOS now only listed A, SATA column and NBSP semicolon and LT, disk and NBSP, name and GT, boot option in place of the usual uefi Ubuntu 1. I'm using a GPT partitioning scheme. I eventually found that the working solution was to properly reinstall GRUB EFI M64. So, how do I do this and NBSP? PS, actually, I succeeded to reinstall GRUB2 EFI on my own and will post my answer here as I was unable to find any complete how-to on this.
Boot your computer with a live USB/CD in UEFI mode. I had two boot options in LT, flash_drive and GT, and UEFI column and LT, flash_drive and GT. The second is needed to expose the EFI variables in //firmware/EFI/ so that EFI bootloader don't fail later on. Booting with the first option gives me the following error. Modprobe FFRs didn't work for me. Root into the broken system, similar to the Ubuntu GRUB2 help but with EFI specificities. Depending on your Linux distribution, you now do different things. For Ubuntu/Debian. Or alternatively, should the above give you a GRUB, but not a bootable one? For Fedora, up to 16, may work for others. In the following command, you have to replace SDX with the device which has the EFI partition you want to boot from. In part Y, you have to replace the Y with the number of the EFI partition, as in /dev/xc. Now type Ctrl+D to exit root, unmount everything and reboot. You may need to adapt this to your needs, different partition table, separate /boot partition, etc., and it may not be the only option, but this worked just fine for me. A suitable live system for fixing things is GRML. There is also an extensive guide on how to set up a bootable USB device, of which the Mac section is the most useful actually. Just create a FAT32 partition, copy the files, reboot, done.
As a potential simplification of the first method, it is possible to directly boot into the system on the hard disk, only using GRUB of the live CD. Tested on Ubuntu 13.10 with the Ubuntu 13.10 live CD. Make sure that Secure Boot is disabled in your BIOS. Insert the live CD and boot it via UEFI. The CD's GRUB menu will show. Press C to get to the command line. Adapt the GRUB command above if you have a different EFI system partition. After your system has booted from the hard disk, it should be enough to reinstall GRUB on the EFI system partition, and to register it with the firmware via GRUB install.
As with Maxine, I found my UEFI settings in BIOS to get damaged and my machine wouldn't boot. In my case, it's a Lenovo ThinkServer RD430 with Linux Mint Debian, and it seemed anything I do about update GRUB or changing any hard drives in the server would cause it to not boot. OS in my case is Linux Mint 201403 Mate DVD 64-bit installed via USB. See below for a complete description of the events that would cause UEFI to not work. Going through exactly the same steps on a ThinkServer TS140 did not result in UEFI losing its mind even once. Looked at RD430 driver page and my BIOS is 2 versions old. I have never had to update BIOS on a motherboard before, so I'm not one to automatically update when there are new versions available. After updating the BIOS, Maxine's answer above worked, only with a twist. The EFI boot GRUB2 command added 2 entries 0000 and 0002. The boot 0002 Linux HT entry first in boot order is not correct. The 0000 entry is correct. To test this, I tried booting without any interruption, which is the 0002 entry. As expected, it didn't work. So I restarted the server, hit F12, and chose Linux Mint. As hoped for, it did boot to my Elend installation. The way to remove unwanted entries via EFI Bootenger is: I use this command to remove entries 0001 and 0002. Boo. Option 0001 was from the last of my many attempts to recover the OS. UEFI notes. If you're reading this and as frustrated with UEFI as I am/was, here are some notes and resources. Booting to UEFI shell is akin to using a DOS shell. Intel made a PDF reference manual for EFI shell commands. Lenovo's UEFI_on_TS430 document is the only resource I have seen explaining usage of EFI shell. Another UEFI shell reference from Partition Administrator's Guide. You can try booting to a partition from the EFI shell by navigating to the loader and executing it. UEFI wants the disk to have a GPT partition table, not MS-DOS part table. UEFI wants the first partition on your disk to be formatted FAT32 or FAT. For a generic boot there must be a /EFI/boot directory at the root with book64.efi in it. Some people copy their grub64.efi from where it was installed to /EFI/boot/books 64.efi, and this cheat worked for them. Anytime you make grub changes, use EFI Bootenger V before and after to ensure your reboot is okay. My RD430 experience. I have reinstalled the OS 10 plus times in the past week trying to sort this out and set up the server. My configuration is a SSD on this RAID controller in the PCI 2.0 slot with Elend installed on it. OC S3008LL8i RAID controller, reflash to it mode, in the second PCI 3.0 slot with 6x3 TB drives. RAM, 12GB ECC, 3x4 GB. Here are changes I would make that cause my system to not boot. Change S3008LL8 IPC slots, leaving the SSD plus card alone. Disable the LSI software RAID BIOS prompt for onboard controller. Add my old Highpoint Rocket card to an OpenC slot. Make a change to /etc/default/grub and then run update grub. Maybe grub install needs to be run as well?
I would upvote this, but apparently I don't have enough rep on superuser. I'm glad I finally found an answer to this after days of fighting clones that worked but wouldn't boot. I think it all relates to UEFI, some kind of secure booting mechanism or something. I'm working offline, so apt-get wasn't an option. What I did was put Ubuntu desktop on a USB stick, add the GRUB2 EFI and GRUB2 EFI and 64 packages to the root of the USB stick, GRUB2 EFI _1.99 RC113 Ubuntu 3 am64.deb and GRUB2 EFI am64 _1.99 RC113 Ubuntu 3 am64.deb for Ubuntu 11.04. Change is appropriate for distro and architecture, and put the following in a script on the USB stick as well. Boot up the live USB stick, open a terminal, run the command, and the job is a good on. The only occasional problem is that UEFI sometimes got moved down the boot priority order below the HDD, at which point you need to go into the BIOS and change the boot order to stop it trying and failing on SATA column drive. You can also use dpkg reconfigure instead of dpkgi, but that asks a couple of bootloader questions. Edit: I also don't have enough rep to comment, so what I thought was a comment on a reply turns out to be a reply.
If you want to support the channel, please consider subscribing.